Mariquita.
Hello, everyone. Hello, beautiful vegans. Thanks for joining. I'm Mariquita Solis, vegan empowerment coach, and I help vegans who are struggling in anger, depression, and sadness move into peacefulness, power, and effective activism. This is really my passion to help people move forward. And I work one on one with vegans. I also have group coaching programs to bring vegans into support and unity because I know a lot of us are out there feeling alone. And this is my wonderful live stream. I'm very excited about it because every week we have just amazing guests to really inspire me. And they really charged me with their beautiful energy and everything they're doing. And today, my guest is Michele Granberg, a much sought after mindset coach. And today we'll be discussing the true nature of veganism, the spiritual life of animals, and much more. So thank you, Michele, for coming. And everyone, please let us know who's watching. If you're watching the replay, thank you. And let us know where you're watching from. If you have questions, Michele and I will be happy to answer them later if you're catching us on replay. And make sure you give StreamYard permission to use your name. So thank you so much, Michele, for coming here and sharing your wisdom.
Hey, Mariquita. Thank you so much for extending the invitation. It's wonderful to connect. I look forward to connecting to your community. I think there's lots of similarities in our viewpoints, as well as what we're doing in the world, and as well as our passion for, spreading the word about veganism, and just trying to make the world a better place for all of us beings on it. And, I'm a coach, as you said, and a hypnotherapist. I'm also a vegan and an animal rights activist. So I have all of that going on. Life is quite busy. But I'm happy to sort of talk a little bit about where compassion intersects with spirituality and ethics and veganism. And, maybe we could even say that veganism is synonymous with compassion, right? Absolutely.
I definitely think it is. I mean, I don't think you can have one without the other. So yeah, there's a lot to explore here. So Michele, how did you start out on your vegan journey?
Well, it's interesting because I think looking back for most of us who, made that sort of official step into veganism, which we want to remind people veganism is not a diet, it's not about food, it's so much more than that. It really is a stance, against cruelty. And so, for me, I just look back at my childhood and I see where these memories stand out in my mind where I didn't feel okay, but there was a time when some animal was being hurt and it just didn't resonate with me, even as a child, especially as a child. It seems we lose touch with that natural inborn compassion. I remember crying when my father was killing a bunch of ants that were outside. Like, just sort of everybody is still in touch with that natural inborn, like we don't want to see life destroyed. We want any living being to live. And fast forward today, of course, it was really just I was a vegetarian most of my adult life. And so much of the information about the animal agriculture industry is so hidden from us. And when I came across that and I just started to rub elbows with and network with and get to know vegans, it seemed like the most obvious choice. Like, why hadn't I done this sooner? It just was like, although I always had a sense that one day I would go vegan, that day just finally arrived. And it was like New Year's Eve. I just used New Year's Eve as we have, we say we have, what are our goals for the new year? I said, that's it. I'm going vegan. I don't even know what that really means, what that's going to look like, but it feels right. It feels like the next step for me. So I went.
That's a great story. Yeah. And we don't know. And we don't ever know when it's going to kind of hit, when the connection's going to, when we're going to make the connection. And it's all those lifelong moments. Like we're talking about what Bobby Sudd said, it's never just one thing. It's like as a child, the ants, and then as a child, when I was playing with my little ponies, and the next thing they said the ponies had been killed, and I was so sad. And just making these connections with animals as we're younger and throughout the years. I mean, it really is building the foundation to for effective change to a more compassionate way of life.
It's a series of things that happen that progress us and move us towards that. But I really also look back and see like everything was leading me, things led me away. Like I was born vegan. We're all born vegan, right? We're led away from that, conditioned, pinched off from that, led away, told other things that we then believe. And maybe at some point, wouldn't be wonderful if everybody circled back to that originality, that original spark that wanted us to be kind to animals, and that love and that kinship, that we have with animals, so that, I don't know, veganism will be ubiquitous. Wouldn't it be nice if it was just the way that it was? Because it certainly could be.
Right. You're right. And it is our natural, innate way to live. And so let me ask you this, Michele. So it's very easy, it's easy for us to turn off and on. To close a blind eye but what causes that? What's behind that? In order to live, we can't be on emotions all the time. We have to be able to just shut down for a little bit and move on. Even when we're in the grocery store, we'd be crying every minute, right? What is that called? Why is that so important to realize that people aren't terrible people? It's part of the way that we are. The way that we function in life. And does this make sense what I'm asking you?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And I think the way to circle back to our natural compassion and connection and empathy for people, because it certainly seems like we're living in a crisis moment, a crisis of lack of empathy, of lack of compassion. Like it's at epidemic proportions. It really does feel that way. And the way we treat animals is just another symptom of that. And I think maybe the way back from that is to recognize that, what I go through, you go through. That I may have my personal journey, my own personal traumas, my own personal woundedness. All of us carry some of that. And to be able to recognize that everybody has that, especially for us as vegans trying to reach people, we really want to, it wasn't overnight for me. There was a journey, that led me here. Remember that, so that really be patient with that. So part of it, is there's no formula. There's no trick. There's no formula. There's no perfect, message to say to people to get them to sort of wake up, but I hope for that moment for everybody where they have this sort of aha moment where they recognize and take responsibility for any way in which they're harming themselves, others, humans and animals, and therefore, hurting the planet, that they come to that moment where they are able to just fully not make excuses anymore, not justify their behaviors, not even just, and be aware of how their thoughts affect the world, how their words affect the world, how their emotions affect the world, as well as their behavior. And then remember that they have agency. We want people to remember that, just realizing that, don't judge yourself and don't believe that you're a victim. That's the turning point for each of us. Maybe the moment at which we realize we can not only change ourselves and we can make a difference in the world. That's a life-defining moment. And it's not a one moment thing, and it's a journey. But all I know is, and I probably imagine you relate to this, I think about myself just 5 years ago. I think about myself just 10 years ago, never mind 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago. And I almost don't recognize that woman. Like I recognize her, but she feels more like a her, like distant, like someone else, like, because I'm not her any longer, like almost in every way possible through effort, but I'm not special or different than anybody else. Anybody can take on with support that journey of transforming themselves. Does that make sense? Does that answer a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And it's reminding me of how you are the solution, right? That the solution isn't outside of ourselves. It's inside of ourselves when we become aware of our needs and really living in alignment with our beliefs and our values. And a lot of times that it's really sad that people are not aware of what, I mean, they don't have values, they don't have needs, they're just in this rat race moving forward, just barely, barely struggling and surviving. So, I mean, it's a sad place to be in. And yes, I mean, I could say, look back 10 years and think, well, who was that person, right? And it was someone who was the victim, that was always telling the victim story. But now it's like, forget that. I mean, who wants to live like that? It's a miserable way to live. I mean, always, because then you're letting other people define your happiness. And I'll get up, and if they're happy with what I say, then I can sleep at night. And if they don't like what I say, then I'm going to lay awake all night crying. So I'm so glad to be out of that victimhood, and definitely. But I mean, that's where a lot of people are. And so that's, again, circling back to compassion for others. And I mean, this is a big topic in the vegan movement. I mean, how do we have compassion? How do you have compassion for, like, let's just say the butcher at the grocery store? How do you have compassion for him? What would you suggest? I mean, what's the first tangible step that someone could take, to do that?
Well, I mean, the how to do it is almost independent of the fact that we have to do it anyway. It's like it's hard to do it, and like the power of and. It's hard to have compassion for the butcher, the slaughterhouse worker, the big systems that are in place, the animal agriculture industry. And we just have to, because otherwise we're just contributing to the milieu of fear and anger and hate and ego that is the source of all of these, big human, dramatic, issues that are going on. And so maybe the same way that we start to feel compassion for the animals, see them as individuals, right? One of the ways that we talk about with outreach and when we talk about veganism is people tend to think of like big groups of people. They lump people into groups. It's just what we do. Non-vegans also maybe lump animals together, all fish, as if they're just one giant fish, one big group of fish. When in fact, even fish are individuals. So if we apply that as vegans to people, and we just, this person, this butcher in front of me, is a person, is a human with flaws and failings and challenges. Who knows what they've been through? And I think there's science studies behind people who grow up in a violent household or a household with abuse or at the very least a critical, judgmental, yelling household, connect the dots to what they wind up doing for a living. Very often they wind up in professions that are violence based, which the animal agriculture industry, the slaughter industry, all of them, they really are, they commercialize and they commodify and monetize death and violence. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Like, that's what's happening. They're taking live, beautiful beings and friggin' killing them. Like, they go from being alive to, we're going to hold them down now, create systems that kill them. And it's absolutely awful, but it's both. We want to change that, we want to lean into that, because we don't want to ignore their plight. If you're going through that, Mariquita, and that was happening to you in the slaughterhouse, I would do everything to try to help you. Same thing for the individual animals. We want to lean in, look for them, find them, listen, hear, and at the very least bear witness and tell their stories and tell their truth. But we can also do that for the individual, people, those who are struggling and suffering need the most compassion. It's like, it's almost easy to have compassion for someone who's nice and kind, even if it's just on the surface. We gravitate towards them. I'm repelled by people that repel me, right? And there's a word that was coined by Jim Mason, who co-wrote books with Peter Singer. He wrote An Unnatural Order. He calls it misanthropy. right? And it's this invisible, another one of those invisible belief systems that we're all immersed in. This is the invisible belief system of hate and contempt toward animals. Now, none of us would ever want to admit or believe when we hear that that's woven into us as a human species, that all of us in some way have bias at the very least, speciesism, and downright hate and contempt toward animals. Like where that came from, there's so much to say about that. It's not like one simple explanation for that. But we have to remember when we meet someone, it's not that it's not their fault, but they've been born into, people have been born into this invisible, close as the nose on our face belief system. How do you see past belief system that's so ever, like we breathe? It's so ubiquitous to believe animals are less than us, humans are up here, and you know, it's taught to us as children. I mean, at some point, even though our childhood books, there's a lot of anthropomorphism as well, you know, which is not actually good. Right? Should we talk about that? I don't know.
Yeah, if you like, go ahead.
Going off. Yeah, so anthropomorphism is part of this conversation because it can work to the advantage of animals, because we want to remember that just like us, animals, of course, are sentient. Just like us, animals feel pain. Just like us, animals suffer. Just like us, animals want to stay with their families. They establish relationships. They feel pain. You know, they feel fear and all of those things. And be careful not to assign and project, you know, human characteristics, because they are different. They're different but similar, you know, and sentimentalize, you know, and cartoonize. I just made up that word.
Oh,
Like cartoonize and make into just funny, you know, objects, animals, because all that does is distance us from them as real. You know, we've almost made abstractions of animals, you know, and like as if they don't really exist and have a life, and then we think like they have no life separate from us, and they don't have a spiritual life either, and they do, and they really do. So when it comes to compassion, and we want to talk about like compassion without exceptions, like what would that world, we could say what would that world look like, and people will go into that state of futility, like we can't change the world, I can't change the world, I'm just one person. But as individuals, we could certainly make it our business, make it our goal to cultivate compassion. And just for today, we could say, just for today, I will act only from compassion with no exclusions, including, how about just for today, don't exclude animals, but not just some animals, all animals. Like, this is where people get triggered sometimes. It's so interesting when you talk about compassion, and we're really trying to just, we're not trying to make people buy into something that's bad for them. We're trying to make them buy into kindness across the board, compassion across the board. I think that's a good thing. Last time I checked, I think that's a win-win for everybody. But when people are confronted very often where their gaps are, where their blind spots are when it comes to compassion, and they go into that cognitive dissonance, which means they get upset because all of a sudden they recognize a version of them, a part of them that's not in alignment, but they don't know how to fix it, change it. They don't know, they haven't really gotten their belief system up to speed with that impulse, which is like, oh, I really should be. Why am I not kind? Why am I eating cows and loving dogs? But in that moment where the opportunity is, okay, follow that line of thinking, right? They'll often double down on their same old belief system, which means to see differences, you know, and exclude and separation and isolation. So with a world without compassion, that's what a world without compassion looks like, or that's what relationships without compassion look like. There's separation and isolation. because compassion ultimately brings us together. It's the binding thread. I feel for you, and I'm going to act from that feeling place to help you, and you're going to do the same. We're going to help each other mutually when we need it. That's what we're talking about. Same with the animals. Oh, these animals need help. I'm going to reach out and I want to help them.
Yeah, you're right. And so many people feel threatened by that now. Like if the animals are on the same level, wait a minute, that's going to throw off everything in my life because I never believed that before. And so now it becomes, yeah, a threat. And I don't want to have to go there. What's going to have to change in my life? Now I'm going to have to treat my dog differently. Maybe I kept him outside all 24/7, right? He lives out. Now I'm going to have to bring him inside. So I just can't do that. It's easier to stay in these old patterns of beliefs that we've been fed as children, that we watched and learned and taught, and so we hold on to them because we don't know any difference. And also, well, I mean, when I mean, as for me, I mean, and I'm sure many people have had the experience of, you tell someone you're vegan and they think you're nuts. So then you think, well, now I'm going to be ridiculed, made fun of, right? I'm going to have to change my life, and people are going to just mock me. So yeah, it is threatening to people. And so, I mean, when we look at that from compassion and see that it's threatening, instead of judging them for not changing immediately, and just saying, I'm a tool here for you, right? And a compassionate tool, right? And let's just say they try and they fail, and then we don't judge them, and we don't attack people on social media that have been vegan and they're not. We just, I mean, people, we're doing our best here, right? Everyone's doing their best. If we could just be very supportive of them and be thankful for the time they were vegan, at least, and also extend again kindness, because it's through compassion and kindness that they would shift back, right? It's not going to be by attacking them. Oh, look at that person that failed, this celebrity that was vegan, now they're not, now we hate them. I never want to have anything to do with you. I mean, this attacking and hate is what you're talking about in our culture that's just so rampant, and it is destroying us. I mean, how do we live in a peacefully in a culture like this? I mean, every thought, everything we're saying, our whole being is energy, because we're energy and it's flowing outward. It's not just staying right here. All the anger that I might have for that celebrity that stopped winning vegan is just rippling out in the universe. And how is that helping anyone? How's that helping the animals? It's just not. And that's the thing, is to bring this back to it's about the animals. Ultimately, it's not about me. It's not about that celebrity, right? It's about helping the animals in the best way possible. And what does that look like? And that ties into radical compassion for every living being, because humans are animals also. So I love what you said about looking at, I mean, that we're grouping people together, right? And grouping animals together. We're the separateness of this, the way of thinking, right? And where we're also taking a moral stance against people is another issue. But yeah, we've got to see ourselves as part of the bigger picture here. And all the living beings are, pieces of this big universe. So we, if one part of the big universe is ill, like maybe the butcher, he's having a very hard time. I mean, who could live in peace like that? So we need to heal here, not to attack. So that's my rant. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's at the end of the day, ultimately that's what needs to happen in the bigger picture of things. We need that gigantic shift back to oneness, and that we're all earthlings and that we share this planet, and there was more of that prior to domesticating animals, but you know, absolutely, to your point of when we know better, we do better. It's such a simple statement, but it really is absolutely true. And, if people aren't sort of owning that personal responsibility, then that more often than not, if we mention things that can change to help them, they'll feel as if they're being judged, but it's their self-judgment, right? They'll feel as if we're, saying that we're better, when really it's about creating a palatable message and yet holding people accountable. which is always, sort of that fine line, because we're not perfect. Vegans aren't perfect.
No, and yeah, that's another thing to talk about. I mean, yeah, there are no perfect vegans, and this upping people as as a better vegan, and this one's not doing anyway. But so when you talk about ethical veganism, so
Right.
what is that? Because we have all these different things like, well, vegan for this or vegan for that. So tell me about ethical veganism.
Well, I consider myself to be an ethical vegan. And it often, if you say that, it can be a conversation starter, and there's lots of ways people tend to do a lot of compartmentalizing and labeling. And we try to steer away from that, but it's hard to completely steer away from that so that we can have a conversation. So ethical veganism means that your veganism is spurred by, informed by your morals or ethics, your ethical, your moral compass, meaning that it's so much more than food. We abstain from harming animals. In other words, we're in opposition to any animal exploitation. And the way that shows up is both by being vegan, meaning we will not participate by voting with our dollar through our consumerism, right? To those industries that exploit, harm, and ultimately kill animals. And then some of us take it to the next level, which is the action level, not just because veganism is really an inaction, the action level, which would be activism, getting active for the animals as an ethical vegan. I mean, I could say so much about it, but at the end of the day, I can't not get active. I couldn't sit idly by. What I felt when my eyes were open, it was just for me personally. It's different for everybody. I could no longer sit on my couch. And truthfully, my life is not the same now that I'm an activist. Like, I get antsy. I never, I can't just, I mean, I'm going to relax and unwind. I need to do that to have balance. But at the same time, if I'm doing too much of nothing, I can't justify it because of the urgency. We see it from the standpoint of we can't put it off because there is an urgency. It's an emergency for the animals, unfortunately, 24/7. 24/7, they're under threat in the animal agriculture industry, in the fur industries, in the animal testing industries, in the entertainment, there. So ethical veganism is operating from that sort of moral baseline. That's what motivates us to fight for justice for animals. And we think of the animal rights movement as a social justice movement, like other social justice movements, meaning like the animals need their own movement and they haven't had it. It's great. And we can fight for all injustice. There's not one or the other. And they intersect, right? There's that intersectionalism where all social justice movements overlap anyway when you really zoom out and look at it. But people, tend to laugh when we say, I'm fighting for animal rights. Animals, they're just animals. Oh, that's, again, goes back to that speciesism and that misanthropy and all of those invisible ingrained belief systems that are operating without us realizing it, without us realizing we have choice. To unplug. We can. It might be hard, but we can unplug from those large belief systems.
Yeah, we can. And what do you say to people that say, well, you're out there fighting for animals. What about the kids that are starving? Don't you care about them? Because I hear that a lot. Or, you don't care about this because you're fighting for animals. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, we know sort of behind the scenes, that's just another one of those very common top 20 excuses. Really, what they're doing in that moment very often is just trying to get a vegan or an activist in a gotcha moment. They're trying to feel, they want to feel like they want to knock you off your pedestal by bringing that up, and as if we haven't heard that before. So, we could say to them, it is possible, as I said, to fight for more than one justice movement at a time. This is who we're fighting for today. we're here for the animals, because ultimately they want to take it off on a tangent. It's not that they're really coming from their concern for children who are starving, and then we could say, well, hey, is there a protest? Is there a way that you or I, do you know some volunteering we can do? Tell me, and I'm glad to support in any way that I can. So, and that's where that disconnect of it's either us or the animals comes in. It's a mindset shift. I mean, it's not us, or it's not people or animals. As if we treat all people are doing well, living in well-being and peace and in harmony, that would take away. If the animals were living in harmony, that would take away from human harmony. And of course, it couldn't be much further than the truth. And the truth is, they have as much right to inhabit this earth and be left. I want to say be left the F alone, but be left alone as much as we have our sort of human right to not be harmed, to not be touched. I don't want to be touched by you. Thank you. I can't. I don't want to be forced, but we're forcing and touching and taking and enslaving and capturing and fencing and holding captive. Really, that's just factual, So, I think that's, I would try to take someone from that. Hey, I'm just like you. I do feel for humans who are suffering and struggling. I'm helping them too. I'm also helping them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And acknowledging whatever they're saying. What, don't you care about children? Oh, I do care about children. I love to hear about them. I mean, you could, saying, this is my passion, but I have other passions too. So share with me, right? And then that's a beautiful spot when we're not shutting people down and then we're not being triggered.
Passion for helping children.
Right. Yeah. Because they want to trigger us. So if we're not being triggered and if we react differently, then, of course, they're not getting what they want.
Yeah. So maybe that's the first, is to not get tricked, do our best to regulate our own triggers around that. And some of that is just time and experience. Practice, time, experience, and our own self-awareness, which is really important. So that we can just see that people, when they're in that state where they're triggered, will want to externalize. They feel like they're without resources in that moment. Like, I don't know how to answer. She's right. There's some resonation. I resonate sort of with what she's saying. And because I don't have the sort of resources or the tools or the wherewithal in this moment to just admit that to myself, that maybe I need to think about that, or maybe I'm wrong. Like, big deal. Right to you and it, we'd be like, well, just admit that, and then just sort of, let's talk about that, right? So they'll externalize their triggers in our direction, to, just like so many humans do, point fingers. Easier, the path of least resistance is to point a finger, to externalize and blame, which is just a vicious circle for all of us. And like you said, we can't shame someone. We can help open people's eyes, but I don't know that we can shame someone into going vegan or into seeing what's going on with the animals. We can certainly plant seeds with truth, nice truth bombs, I guess, right?
Right. Well, tell us what would you say is the biggest problem with shaming people and getting angry? I mean, but yeah, saying, yeah, they should feel guilty and they should feel ashamed, and then just walking away saying, I'm glad they feel terrible. What do you think's some of the biggest issues with this kind of mindset?
Well, it's more of the same. If what others are doing to animals, I'm going to turn around and do to humans. Again, I'm just adding to that just sort of constant karmic circle that's really going around. And when we see like angry vegans, and there's like angry vegans is like a thing, I understand that where they're coming from is passion and the urgency of wanting things to change for animals, you know. So I it is why veganism is not, I don't want to say it's not for the faint of heart, because anybody can start the journey, but it's so interesting that you'll become a stronger person through that path, because it really does have you sit and scrutinize in a good way yourself, all of the pillars on which your whole self is built on in a good way. It helps us challenge, and I think we want to challenge ourselves and really come out of our comfort zone. And because veganism is not accepted and animal rights is not accepted by the mainstream, it does mean that we are a little on the fringe currently. We're outliers, and we got to know that and just embrace it and accept it. It means if we start to talk about this, we're not going to get a lot of love back. We're not going to, for the most part, we're going to get hate. The same hate they show to animals, it's going to be toxically spewed, towards us. And at first, if you're a vegan or an activist, you might take that personally. You might take it home with you. After a while, you have a shield and you let that bounce off you. At the same time, for all the vegans out there and the activists, let me talk to you right now. If you're feeling burnt out, right? If you're feeling on the edge of stopping, if you're feeling depressed, please talk to someone. Talk to others, or seek out professional help, because that is important and a part of it. I don't know if you know, like Dr. Claire Mann, she wrote a book called Dystopia. She coined the term dystopia, which is this universal angst that anybody who adopts this path and is willing to put themselves out there, talk about it to any degree, experiences this universal feeling of I'm alone in the world. I'm perpetually anxious. I'm perpetually on edge because I know what's happening to animals and I can't stop it. And on top of not being able to stop what's happening to animals, I'm getting shit for it. From most people, because vegans are like 2% of the world. Is that maybe 1%,
1%, maybe.
1% in the world are vegans, and there's only a percentage of a tiny percentage that are activists. We're a small group.
Well, what do you do tell me how you do your activism, because what I do sometimes is do protests. Just hold a sign, but my sign is always peaceful. My sign is always love all animals, right? I'm not, it's very love centered, my sign. I make them myself to make sure that I'm sending the right message, right? And I want to have that. But yeah, I've done the fur protests, I've done the circus and the aquarium. I've been in parades, but it's always so exciting, right? And I'm doing a group coaching about this activism, so I'll tell you all about that in a little bit. But yeah, so activism, it just really makes me feel like I've made a difference. Mm-hmm. So tell me, Michele, how are you an activist?
Yeah, so I've dabbled a little bit. I continue to and do a little bit of every type of activism, because there are really so many types. There's not a one size fits all necessarily. You can find a form of activism if you want to get more active for the animals. Even for the introvert, there are forms of activism that are for you. Although I would also encourage you to come out of your comfort zone and do things, for the animals. It's for the animals that take you out of your comfort zone. You won't regret that either. But, I participate. For me, weekends are for activism. Like, I'm committed, like on my calendar, unless I have things that I absolutely have to do, weekends are blocked out. Every weekend is for activism. I'm very fortunate here. I'm in the New Jersey, New York, Philly area. We have a really strong, pretty cohesive, grassroots community of activists. We're small but mighty, and we're growing. And we are very communicative with one another. We have our chats, and what I want the public to know is that activism is planned. It's organized. It may be I don't know if it looked chaotic to them from an outsider or random or like we just showed up. We just happened to show up with signs. Hello, no, it's planned, it's organized, and it's peaceful. Activism, again, we're coming from the heart of love based, peaceful, and even though we're loud, doesn't mean we're not peaceful. And like you, since I teach peace and I try to help people one on one gain inner peace, I need my messaging to be strong for the animals, but I need to be true to who I am. So I tend to lean into the positive activism. But at the same time, I've done disruptions, many disruptions, and I can talk about what that is, and protests and marches and pressure campaigns and tabling and leafletting. And I also do one-on-one helping people to become activists, helping people to go vegan, transition to veganism, and in addition into activism. So you have someone more experienced just ahead of you to help you with that. So that's another form of activism for me, how I'm helping. I also go to sanctuaries regularly. I'm a regular volunteer. Again, we have a lot of sanctuaries, thankfully, a lot of vegan sanctuaries in my area. So I give back to them because they're giving directly to the animals and they need so much. They need hands helping, they need dollars, they need support, they need exposure, they need awareness. So I see that also as an extension of my activism as well as restorative and energizing for me. Because a lot of people why they're non-vegans is because they've never met a cow face to face. It's so interesting. They've never actually met a pig. That's where I say they're like hypothetical. They're like abstractions. And maybe for some people it would make a difference if they spent an hour touching, talking, listening, being present with one of the so-called food animals, farm animals, or maybe if in a world where you have to meet your animal before you eat it, how many people still would? Some would. Some would. Or some people say they would. Because I try that kind of thought experiment with people when I'm doing outreach sometimes. Like do a thought exercise. If you spent an hour with a lobster you're about to eat, if you gave that lobster name, the cow, the pig, the turkey, the chicken, now try to get them into the place where they're actually imagining that. Most people, if their compassion's anywhere close to the surface of their being, will say, "Ooh, I couldn't. Okay, well, what's the difference? The difference is it happens behind closed doors, and you're paying someone else to do the same thing. Did that right? We were talking about activism.
Yeah, no, that's very, very powerful information, and you're right. There are many different ways, and to challenge yourself, to get out of the comfort zone, try it, and then if you don't like it, that's fine, But I mean, yes, I mean, we could be writing writing emails. I mean, that's another form. Always doing that, really putting the pressure on, like I'm trying to put the pressure on these campaigns.
Social media.
Right. Yeah, there are many ways. I mean, there's no excuse for not taking action, and I didn't realize that there weren't that many activists until you just said that. So, I mean, yes, please, if you're a pre-activist and you're ready, reach out to Michele and me. I mean, she's doing one-on-one, and I'll just say it real quick. I'm doing a 3-month group coaching program to get to. You're going to have your defined what you're going to do in 3 months, and we're going to help you get there. And that's starting at the beginning of March. So reach out to me because we've got to get you up and active. We've got to get up. It's wonderful the choices you're making, and you're making a difference at the grocery store, but there's so much more you can do. And it's okay to feel afraid. You can feel afraid, but you can step into courage. Love the fear. It's okay. We're all afraid, acknowledge it, but the fear can take you into courage, and we'll help you, both of us. I mean, whoever you find, please find someone to get yourself up and helping animals in the best way possible. They need all the help that they can get. And you're right, like Michele says, this is the time, 24/7 suffering for them. So yes.
Doing
Yeah.
something better than doing nothing.
Right. Exactly. Gosh, and I'm looking at this comment and someone's saying, thanks, I connect from Europe. The challenge to me seems how to talk about suffering of animals with people because people get angry and they don't want to see images or videos of suffering. And if they don't really feel it for real changes, then they can never really know what goes on in farmhouses. Just to say they die never gives them a real image of suffering. Well, they see death as natural. And if we describe more, they refuse to listen. And so it's kind of, I'm not getting the rest of the comment, but yeah, I mean, that is a challenge. If people are angry, what would you say if people get angry? I mean, if you encounter anger from someone, what do you do, Michele?
Well, it depends on what they're saying with the anger. Sometimes when somebody's angry, I don't know that we can have a conversation with them if they're at like a 10 on the anger scale. But if they're at like a 2 on the anger scale, you know, I like to point out that for some people, anger is a form of passion. So somewhere in there, there's some passion for something they're against or something that they're for. In that way, you're right, that we can't force people. In this age of internet, I mean, the footage is out there. I tend to think that there's a divine sort of orchestration of things. I like to leave it up to that sometimes. Like if they need to, if it's going to help them, they'll come across the footage somehow, some way. Because not that it's completely unavoidable, but it is accessible. I mean, but the advent of the mobile phone with a friggin' camera in it has changed the world for animals in a lot of ways. And a lot of people will say that documentaries that they've watched, footage that they've watched has been the thing that tipped them over the edge into veganism. So just continue to provide, the footage for people. For some people, maybe just seeing videos of animals, interspecies love stories that they're getting. Oh, one thing that people could do is just share sanctuaries. Sanctuaries, that's one way to maybe get their wheels turning and to make the connection possibly without it being all that awful footage. But, often the sanctuaries will post footage of how well the animals are thriving, but they'll also talk about the fact that this animal was saved from the dairy industry. This animal jumped off a slaughterhouse-bound truck. This animal was in a hoarding situation, So I don't know. For some people, that will, make the connection. But there's the Save movement, which is a large organization that their primary form of street activism is vigils and bearing witness. It's extremely powerful. And even if someone sees you bearing witness, we just have to, in some ways, we have to let them be angry, let them be rageful, stay out of their way if they're going to throw something at us, of course. But at the same time, we don't want to turn away, so I don't. I'm willing to deal with the trauma that it causes me because it's not about me. In order to tell their story, there are the vigils where you go to where the animals are just hours before, it's their last hour. So it's their final hour. And it's really, we can't save them if you've ever been to a vigil, but it is more about acknowledging their existence. And don't we all want, if you're dying in the hospital, Mariquita, you don't want to be alone dying in the hospital, right? You want your loved ones, your family to be there with you of all times. So I tend to equate it that way. And so.
Well, that's beautiful, yeah, and allowing people to be angry because when we see someone that's angry, we see one thing that they're showing us. We don't really see what's going on, and we don't know what's happening the next day, right? They might throw anger at us now, and they might go home and think about it, and I mean things settle, and that anger might turn into curiosity, like what's going on? Why was she here? Why did I feel angry? So to just dismiss it at that level, I mean, it's not really giving credibility or giving what it needs to all the expressiveness of all the emotions that go on underneath the anger, like you're talking about before. No, it's not just anger. These are very complex issues, and they're different levels, right? Levels of awakening, right? They might be angry today, but that's their first level of awakening to tomorrow, right? Waking up and thinking.
Hey, little by little, dismantling little by little these belief systems that they've been clinging to for so long. And if people get really defensive, which a lot of people do, and we don't mean to put them on the defense, it's just sort of a natural outgrowth of what we're doing. You know, we are looking to shake up their minds, you know, but know that those, when they get really defensive, that's just the surface, like you're saying. But maybe they're just doing that because their pride in the moment doesn't want them to admit, and they don't want to feel vulnerable. It's really helpful to understand human psychology. It helps you understand why people do what they do, you know, and understand the psychology of eating animals as well, and just dig a little bit like Melanie Joy, like her work, carnism, and the psychology of eating animals and how far that goes back, you know. And one of the things we can do if people won't watch the footage is just give them maybe they'll read about it, at least articles or books that are a little more not academic but are a little more evidence based. For some people that's they're so intellectual, they might not have their heart, but their intellect will feed off of some of the good. I am not the most expert, experienced, even most, you know, articulate. When I do my best and I come from the heart, but there are so many, thankfully, in our movement, thank goodness, there's some smart people, articulate people, people who know how to, who write books about it, who talk about it, who know how to get things done, right? Like again, Jim Mason and like Peter Singer and like Dr. Will Tuttle, right? I've spoken to him. I shout out to love Dr. Will Tuttle. Read his book, The Inner Peace Diet, right? And just some of the other people that we follow, like Earthling Ed and Joey Carbstrong and Ryuji Chua. I mean, yeah. So I hope
Yeah, this is great help. I mean, there's a lot of great nuggets that you've given us, and actually, Dr. Will Tuttle's coming to my church, and I'm the leader now. I'm the leader of the Healthy Living Group, and I'm also the leader of the animal ministry at my church. So I weave it in, like you're saying, like sanctuaries. And of course, I can't, I can't do what I would like to do. So, but I do it in the different way. Look at these animals that have been saved, you know, on our church animal ministry page. You know, I'm working with my friend Shelley, who is in charge, who owns the sanctuary, Shangri-La Sanctuary. So Shelley's always posting the cows, and then, you know, and they're frolicking, these little cows. And so it's very important that people see this. And this isn't nobody has to feel threatened by seeing a baby cow playing, right? I mean, this is a different path to go into, you know, a different way of entry. So yeah, there's many different ways, and what you're saying has been very helpful, Michele. So I know we're coming up at the top of the hour, so I want you to tell us about, I mean, what are your passions? How can we get involved, and what would you like to say?
well, everything. I would love, you know, I would love to hear from people, just as we don't want this just to go out into the air and not land anywhere. If this is landing with anybody out there in terms of you want to do something, you want to take another step, next step, maybe it's reaching out to you, reaching out to me, and either of us could help them one-on-one to go vegan, make that transition, coach you through it, move you through it. If you're interested in activism, if that speaks to you, I am a mentor and team member with Animal Activism Mentorship, which is an international program, a completely free program, which pairs you with less experienced activists with slightly more experienced activists in a mentor-mentee one-on-one relationship where we communicate with each other, and we help meet that person wherever they are and help them set goals and get past barriers and get them involved in the activism community. So there's that. You know, I also have a TV show as well that airs on Princeton Community Television here in New Jersey. I've had that for 9 years, I believe, and it's archived on YouTube. You can just look for Positive Energy TV. And I talk a lot about animal rights and veganism and animals and also spirituality and alternative healing, which we didn't get so much into today, but I also do energy healing and mindfulness sessions and meditation instruction, hypnotherapy, past life regression, intuitive readings like past life, Akashic record readings, the mindset coaching, law of attraction coaching. I also do pet loss bereavement sessions. So that's a specialty of mine that I have some training in, really about if you're anticipating losing a companion animal, or if you've lost a companion animal recently or at some point in the past and you're still struggling with the emotions, pain around that, I work with people one-on-one. It's a really nice, very sacred time to help someone through the very real pain is no different than losing a human loved one. And it's a very disenfranchised form of grief because a lot of people in the world will brush it off like, get over it. It's just an animal. It was just a cat. And to us, the other level of loving animals, the way we love them, is that they are like children. They are to us. They're no different in that we have a deep, closer than a lot of our human relationships. And of course, I would love that to translate also to veganism, because as much as a dog has a personality, and everybody knows that, and they're quirky and they're funny and they're a pain in the butt and they vocalize to us and they make their needs known. If you ever got to know a cow one-on-one and brought a cow into your life, same, different, but same in every single way that matters. They have personalities. They no different. They same wants, same needs, same cuddliness. I'm telling you. Please make the connection. Please. Well,
Yes.
they have one life to live. We have one life to live. Let's not get in their way. Let's not.
Amen to that. Yes. Yes. And so, Michele, so that's amazing that you're a mentor and you do so much. And yes, please, everyone, go check out the YouTube. What's your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel is, if you just search for my name, Michele Granberg, and or Positive Energy TV, you'll come up with my channel. And you can search for Animal Activism Mentorship on YouTube as well. And that will come up because I do workshops. I moderate workshops with them as well. And then we have 3 or 4 live events. Contact me if anybody wants to meet us in different cities around the country right now. DC and Ohio. Anyway, come join us. No matter what level of activist you are, come join us. Be with us. We're gonna make some noise for the animals. Be effective for the animals.
Definitely. Well, when you're in Atlanta, Michele, we'll have to meet up.
Yes, 100%, 100%, or close to it. Yeah. I will let you know. That's awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yes. And so subscribe to Michele's YouTube channel and please hit subscribe here, and definitely reach out to us, because sometimes you just need a little extra support. And we're both coaches. Michele's a therapist. I mean, so we've done the work ourselves. We know what it's like to really feel depressed. I mean, to really have been here and shifted to a whole nother place, a whole nother level of transformation. And it's just so beautiful to help people transform into peace, because there's so many vegans that can't sleep at night, and that no one deserves to live like that. Nobody. And we can help you. So please reach out to us. And there's a lot of free stuff, right? Just like the YouTubes. I've got many YouTube great interviews and great guests. So yes, there's no reason for people to suffer, please. And you are the solution, like I said before, and like Michele is saying, right? Take charge and step into newness. Let's see, here's Ellen's comment. She's saying, Michele, I've seen so many of your videos. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you, Ellen.
and she's a change maker.
Love
She's she sews, and she has like sewing classes, and so she's weaving her, like teaching the kids about animals, like the animal prints, and she's got all the information, just weaving that into her sewing classes for
the
children.
creativity. If you're a creative out there, there's always a way to mix your creativity for the animals, to bring it out there in a way that only you can, uniquely. Love that. Love that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So yes, all of us have our own, our own special talents. So think about it. Just spend some time thinking about this, about our conversation, and where you want to grow, and reach out to us, or get ready and go. We're supporting you. So thank you so much, Michele. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching. This has been just an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Namaste vegan, everybody.
Shalom.